Hello and welcome to Spectrum News at 9. My name is Xavier Robert, coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom. Let's take a look at the headlines. Supreme Court dismisses Atiku Obi's appeals, affirms Tinubu as president. Akwa Ibom State Governor Pastor Moeno restates unwavering commitment to leading the state with fear of God. Plus, China vetoes UN draft resolution on Israel-Palestine. Details of these stories and more in a moment. First in the news tonight, the Supreme Court had earlier upheld the victory of President Bola Tinubu in the February 25 presidential election. The apex court, in its ruling by Justice Inyang Okoro, dismissed the appeals by the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party (PDP), Atiku Abubakar, and his Labour Party (LP) counterpart Peter Obi. Justice Okoro upheld the ruling that a candidate does not need to get at least 25% of votes in the Federal Capital Territory (FCT) to be declared as the president. Now, the Supreme Court also ruled that the non-availability of election results on the INEC result viewing portal (IRV) is no ground for the nullification of the February 2023 election, and also dismissed Atiku Abubakar's plea to file fresh evidence against President Bola Tinubu. Meanwhile, President Tinubu has welcomed the verdict of Justice John Okoro-led panel of the Supreme Court on the presidential election petitions filed by the candidates of the People's Democratic Party and the Labour Party challenging the ruling of the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. Tinubu, in an interview with newsmen, said the court has done justice to all issues put up for consideration in the petitions on the merits of the law without fear nor favour. The president noted that with the profound judgment of today, the electoral jurisprudence and constitutional democracy are further consolidated and embedded more indelibly in the nation's national identity. He added that the victory has further energized and strengthened his commitment to continuing to serve all Nigerians of all political persuasions, tribes and faiths with honor and total respect for the diverse opinions and uniting values of Nigerians.
We've concentrated on pulling Nigeria from the mood trap of depression, and we understand the sovereignty of the country. You don't need additional distraction to be able to concentrate on building a new economy for the people, an inclusive one for that matter. And the judgment of the Supreme Court put a stop to shenanigans, put a stop to innuendos, put a stop to lies or trial in the media and public place. The court has demonstrated indivisible commitment to rule of law and humanity, and their commitment to do justice for all Nigerians, regardless of ethnic, religious, or any other.
In a related development, ex-President Muhammadu Buhari has hailed the Supreme Court verdict that upheld President Bola Tinubu's election, asking the opposition to team up with the Nigerian leader. Buhari said this in a statement by his spokesman Garba Shehu, minutes after the apex court dismissed appeals by Peter Obi of the Labour Party (LP) and the People's Democratic Party (PDP's) Atiku Abubakar. He noted that the judgment is a welcome relief to him and to a majority of the citizens of Nigeria. But he expressed worry over the low voting percentages all over the country, especially in urban areas, calling for a change given the acceptance and vibrancy of democracy in Nigeria. Elsewhere, the Deputy President of the Senate, Senator Barrow Jibrin, has hailed the Supreme Court judgment which affirmed the victory of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in February 25 presidential election. The Supreme Court dismissed the appeals by the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party (PDP), Atiku Abubakar, and that of the Labour Party (LP), Peter Obi, challenging Tinubu's election victory. Barrow, in a statement in Abuja by his special advisor on media and publicity Ismail Mudashir, described the judgment as victory for democracy. He urged the appellants to join hands with Tinubu to address the challenges facing the country. Barrow further urged them to accept the ruling of the Apex Court in good faith, while commending the justices of the court for upholding the verdict of the electorate, who they said voted for Tinubu during the presidential election. Meanwhile, the People's Democratic Party (PDP) has expressed disappointment over the judgment of the Supreme Court, which threw out its petition against the declaration of President Bola Tinubu as the winner of the disputed February 25, 2023 presidential election. The party said it was appalled by the judgment of the court in the petition which it filed alongside the PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar against the declaration of the All Progressives Congress (APC) and Bola Ahmed Tinubu as winners of the polls, as declared by the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC). National Publicity Secretary of the party, Debo Ologunagba, said this in a statement in Abuja today. Away from that, the Vice President Kashim Shettima has said that country's $3 trillion infrastructure investment deficit can be better funded by local stakeholders rather than foreign borrowings. Shettima said this at the opening ceremony of the third West Africa Capital Market Conference with the theme Infrastructural Deficit and Sustainable Financing in an Integrated West African Capital Market held in Lagos. The Vice President, who was represented by the Special Advisor to the President on Economic Affairs, Dr. Tope Fashua, said infrastructural deficit in the West African sub-region means that the capital markets have to improve its operations. He advised stakeholders to encourage young West Africans to see the value in the capital market through the creation of apps, use of blockchain technology for transparency purposes, amongst others. In a separate development, the federal government has announced that it had secured a grant of €1 million from the European Union to execute the Instrument for Nuclear Safety projects in Nigeria. It announced this in Abuja through the Nigerian Nuclear Regulatory Authority (NNRA) after EU nuclear safety experts visited the agency. The NNRA, in a statement issued in Abuja by its head of Information and Protocol Unit, Kaite Basi, said the discussions centered on the commencement of the European Instrument for International Nuclear Safety Cooperation project on enhancing the regulatory framework for nuclear safety in Nigeria. The Director General NNRA, Yao Idris, indicated that the implementation of the project would be closely monitored by the International Atomic Energy Agency to ensure compliance with international best practices and regulations. From the Red Chambers now, where the Senate has confirmed Musa Aliyu as the substantive chairman of the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission (ICPC). His confirmation followed the screening exercise today at the plenary. The screening started at around 11:50 a.m. after the leader Bamidele Opeyemi raised a point of order to suspend relevant Senate rules to allow strangers into the chamber. Aliyu, a lawyer and Attorney General of Jigawa State, was screened at the Committee of the Whole chaired by the Deputy President Jibrin Barrow. Recall that President Bola Tinubu had written to the Senate on Wednesday seeking confirmation of Aliyu as chairman of the agency. Meanwhile, the Senate has said that President Tinubu will present the 2024 budget to the National Assembly in the next 2 weeks. The President will also submit the supplementary budget for 2023 to the National Assembly for consideration. The Chairman Senate Committee on Appropriation, Solomon Adeola, who made this known during the inaugural meeting of the committee, stated that the National Assembly would ensure that the 2024 budget is passed before December 31, 2024. Deola, however, promised that irrespective of the lateness in the submission of the 2024 budget, the Senate would do a thorough job. On to the Green Chambers, where the House of Representatives has rejected a motion that sought to compel the federal government to make the 2023-2024 secondary school examination free for all Nigerians. The motion, moved by Anamero Dekeri, called on the federal government to make WAEC, NECO and JAM free for this academic session, but the lawmakers kicked against it. In a motion, Dekeri said the federal government has saved money through the removal of petroleum subsidy and should help families that are struggling. However, following a long debate, Awaji Abiante moved a motion for the House to step it down, and it was adopted unanimously. And while the House of Representatives has vowed to probe oil firms operating in the country on allegations of failure to remit a total of $8.251 billion as stipulated in the 2022 Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative (NETI) report. The resolution was passed following the adoption of a motion co-sponsored by Ikenga Ugochinyere and Alhassan Doguwa, the lawmakers representing Idiato Federal Constituency and Doguwa Tudun Wada Federal Constituency of Imo and Kano states. Leading the debate, Ugochinyere, who called for the House's intervention, observed that Section 4, Subsection 2 of the 1999 Constitution as amended empowers the National Assembly to make laws for the peace, order, and good governance of the Federation or any part thereof. The House is displeased that the 2021 Oil and Gas Report disclosed a rise in the number of unremitted revenues to the Federation, amounting to $9.85 billion and a total crude oil and gas revenue of $23.046 billion, indicating a 13% increase from the total of $20.430 billion realized in 2020. In a separate development now, the Department of State Services DSS has released a former chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission EFCC, Abdul Rashid Bauer, after over 100 days in custody. The Director of Public Relations and Strategic Communications of the DSS, Peter Fanaya, confirmed the release in a statement on the agency's official X account. Reports say Bauer was arrested and detained by the DSS on June 14, 2023, following an invite over undisclosed reasons after he visited President Tinubu. Back here, Akwa Ibom State Governor Pastor Umoino has restated his unwavering commitment to leading the state with a fear of God as a true and loyal servant, acknowledging that he would give account of his stewardship before his Creator when his tenure is due. Governor Eno was exchanging views with the World President General Council of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Pastor Ted N.C. Wilson, who was on a courtesy visit at Government House, Uyo. Receiving the delegation, the governor expressed appreciation to the clergy and his entourage for the visit, acknowledging that the state is blessed to receive such a high-ranking church leader within his 5 months on the saddle as governor of Akwa Ibom State. Affirming his calling as a pastor and the governor of one of the most religious-centric states in the country, Pastor Eno encouraged the delegation to maintain their spiritual stance with God and grow from being just religious people to true Christians by replicating the life of Christ on earth, noting that as a pastor he was conscious of his spiritual stance with God the day he swore to an oath of office as governor, knowing that he will one day stand before his Creator to give account of his stewardship. The governor expressed appreciation to the leadership of the Seventh-day Adventist Church and the entire Christians in the state for their unwavering support during his electioneering campaigns and the vote that made his victory possible. Earlier, the cleric, Pastor Ted Wilson, who was accompanied by his wife Nancy and the church delegation from the eastern region of Nigeria, has said he was in Government House to notify and invite the governor to the upcoming centenary celebration of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, holding on Saturday, 28th of October at Ikorekpene Township Stadium. He said the church has over 22 million baptized members and has spread across over 212 countries of the world, and enumerated the growth and positive impacts the church has contributed to humanity and the world at large. Government House correspondent Jane Noah reports that Wilson particularly acknowledged the serenity and ambience of the state and expressed delight to the governor for his humility, warm reception and exemplary leadership quality, which has proven his spiritual calling as a pastor, a title of which he also proudly shares, and thanked the people of the state for the display of religious tolerance and freedom of worship, which is the bedrock of the peace experienced in the state. Meanwhile, Akwa Ibom State government has reiterated that the ban of private and commercial motorcycles beyond designated areas in Uyo metropolis still subsists. In a release signed by the State Commissioner for Internal Security and Waterways, retired General Koko Essien, and made available to newsmen, the ban on the use of private and commercial motorcycles except registered dispatch riders within the Uyo capital city area, which includes Ikorekpene Road, Abak Road, Akar Road, Aran Road and Wangiba Road, is still in force. According to him, the state government has noticed with dismay the illegal return of private and commercial motorcycles beyond designated areas, hence the need for the reminder. He therefore notified the public, especially all motorcyclists, that security agencies have been briefed to strictly enforce the ban on the use of motorcycles within Uyo metropolis from Saturday, the 28th day of October, adding that any motorcycle found within Uyo capital city development area from the said date shall be confiscated and immediately destroyed without option of fine. Still to come in the news. ECB purses rate hike cycle. Let's start with this.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Every day marks a day of significance.
That in view of the apology tendered by this former minister who had earlier been cleared by this August Assembly,
as we face critical issues, developments and events which shape our social and political landscape here in Nigeria and beyond. Political Spectrum is a program specially designed to help make sense of all the moving parts of developments and occurrences in our nation's polity and political economy.
There is nothing wrong with Nigeria, but there's everything wrong.
The educational history of public figures holds significance beyond mere biographical details.
From executive, legislative and judicial developments at national and subnational levels to international diplomacy and relations.
Join us for exclusive interviews with key political figures, expert opinions, analysts, thought-provoking conversations for and against, shedding light on the major issues that matter. We will always keep you updated on the most factual, smartest and unbiased reportage.
Stay tuned to Political Spectrum. Political Spectrum. All sides matter at the round table. Political Spectrum. Exclusive to Spectrum Television.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Many thanks for staying tuned as we move on now to Africa, where elders of the Nandi community in Kenya have renewed demands for Britain to return the skull of Koitalel Arab Samoei, a chief as well as a spiritual and military leader killed by the British in 1905. The fresh demand comes days before King Charles III's visit to Kenya on 31st October. Samoei, who waged a fierce resistance against the colonialists, was killed by British soldier Colonel Richard Menedzahen after tricking Samoei and other Nandi leaders into attending a truce meeting. According to reports, the elders are also seeking the return of their stolen cultural artifacts and compensation for the atrocities committed against the community during colonial rule, including murder, detention, and forcible displacement of the Nandi. Meanwhile, Samoei's skull is believed to be in a museum collection somewhere in the UK. Nandi elders have repeatedly asked Britain to return his remains. Meanwhile, a member of parliament was ordered to remove a traditional Palestinian scarf he was wearing during parliamentary proceedings on Wednesday. Farah Malim said he was wearing the scarf in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza amid the fighting between Israel and Hamas. He said Palestine needs support of everybody in Kenya. But the Speaker of the National Assembly ordered the Member of Parliament to remove the scarf, saying the government violated parliamentary rules. Fellow MPs also condemned the legislator for disrespecting the House rules. It comes a few days after Kenyan police briefly detained 3 people for participating in a pro-Palestinian meeting in the capital, Nairobi. Meanwhile, President William Ruto has expressed his government's full support for Israel in the ongoing conflict. In the meantime, leaders of the countries that are home to the world's major tropical rainforests are meeting in Brazzaville, the capital of the Republic of the Congo, for what's known as the Three Basins Summit. The leaders represent African, South American, and Southeast Asian nations, and they say they are aiming to restore 3.5 square kilometers of rainforest across the Amazon, Congo, and Mekong basins. The reports say these regions account for 80% of the world's tropical rainforests, which play a key role in absorbing carbon emissions. Also, authorities in Equateur province of the Democratic Republic of Congo have recovered 10 more bodies from a boat accident that happened on Sunday, raising the death toll to 54. The Health and Humanitarian Affairs Minister for the province, Luc Didier Mbula, also said that 267 people were rescued. Authorities believe that about 50 people are still missing, although they could not retrieve the passenger manifest as the boat's owner also drowned. The accident happened in the early hours of Sunday when a wooden vessel sank in the Lulanga River in western DR Congo. This is the second deadly boat accident to happen in the country this month. Meanwhile, the government has announced that it is working on tighter measures, including banning dilapidated vessels and separating people from traveling together with cargo and pets. DR Congo is vast and has poor transport infrastructure, forcing most people to travel using dilapidated boats and in unsafe sailing conditions. Still in Africa, the United States and Saudi Arabia have said that they will resume talks in Jeddah aimed at achieving a ceasefire in Sudan. Reports say representatives of Sudan's army and paramilitary rapid support forces RSF have arrived in the Saudi port city for the talks. Recall that previous peace talks in Jeddah city collapsed in June after numerous ceasefire violations. In the meantime, Zimbabwe's main opposition leader Nelson Chamisa says his party will not participate in what he described as criminal by-elections to fill 15 seats for members who were controversially recalled from parliament. Reports say by-elections have been scheduled for December 9 after the parliamentary speaker declared the seats vacant following a declaration by the interim Secretary General of the Citizens Coalition for Change (CCC) party, Sengezo Shabangu, that the members of parliament were no longer members. Chamisa dismissed the recalling of lawmakers, saying his party will not waste time participating in the alleged unconstitutional by-elections. Now, on the foreign scene, the police in the U.S. state of Maine have waged a sprawling manhunt for a gunman who killed at least 16 people at a bowling alley and a bar in the deadliest mass shooting this year in America. Reports say dozens of people were wounded in the rampage in the small town of Lewiston, and in the absence of a formal death toll, local officials estimated the number of fatalities at between 16 and 22. Meanwhile, Lewiston is on lockdown, with schools closed and residents ordered to stay indoors.
Card is considered armed and dangerous. He is a person of interest, however, and that's what we'll label him at moving forward until that changes. If people see him, they should not approach Card. He is considered armed and dangerous. He is a person of interest, however, and that's what we'll label him at moving forward until that changes. If people see him, they should not approach Card or make contact with him in any way. A vehicle, which was a vehicle of interest in this incident, was located in Lisbon, and we are now also asking residents in Lisbon to shelter in place.
Still on the foreign scene, U.S. President Joe Biden has warned China that the U.S. will defend the Philippines in case of any attack in the disputed South China Sea. The comments come days after two collisions between Filipino and Chinese vessels in the contested waters. Reports say Manila had contested Chinese claims to the waters, cutting floating barriers and inviting media to film what it calls Beijing's dangerous moves at sea. Meanwhile, China has vetoed a United Nations Security Council draft resolution regarding the conflict between Israel and Palestine, pointing out that the draft departed from the spirit of its previous resolutions. Zhang Zhong, who is China's permanent representative to the UN, said in an explanation of the vote that resolutions did not address the root cause of the conflict between the two countries. Last Wednesday, a draft resolution focusing on the humanitarian situation of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, emphasizing the protection of civilians, and was supported by an overwhelming majority of council members. In a related development, China is set to provide approximately $2.05 million in humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. According to a statement from the China International Development Cooperation Agency, CIDCA, the country's foreign aid and development organization, the aid will be comprised food, medicine, and other emergency humanitarian aid supplies. It added that the aid is in addition to the $1 million aid China had previously provided. Still the foreign scene, the United Nations agency in Gaza says it will have to halt aid operations within a day if fuel is not delivered. Reports say Israel has refused to allow fuel to enter Gaza since Hamas's brutal October 7 attack, saying it would only be used by the militant group to fuel its fight against Israel. Speaking to a newsman on how long the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, UNRWA, could last without fuel, spokesperson Tamara Al-Rifai said they can only last a day and will eventually have to halt operations. Recall that UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres told the UN Security Council that without fuel, aid cannot be delivered, hospitals will not have power, and that drinking water cannot be purified or even pumped. Meanwhile, the Russian Foreign Ministry has announced that delegates from the Palestinian militant group Hamas have arrived in Moscow for talks. Recall that Russia's Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said at a weekly briefing that she can confirm that representatives of the Hamas Palestinian movement are visiting Moscow. Now, Moscow had not previously announced plans for talks with the militant group, which launched an attack on Israel earlier this month, prompting an unrelenting bombardment of the Gaza Strip by the Israeli military. Meanwhile, Hamas's delegation is reportedly led by Moussa Abu Mazouk, a senior member of the militant organization. Still on the foreign scene, Russian lawmakers have backed a record increase in military spending to fund Moscow's offensive on Ukraine in a first reading of the bill today. Reports say defense spending will account for almost a third of all outlays in 2024, up 68% to 10.8 trillion rubles. Moscow has already spent tens of billions of dollars on ammunition, missiles, tanks, drones, equipment, and soldiers' salaries since it sent troops into Ukraine in February 2022. Meanwhile, President Vladimir Putin has doubled down on the offensive as the economic and human costs of Moscow's 20-month campaign continue to mount. Elsewhere, 27 people have died and 4 are missing after Hurricane Otis made landfall in Mexico. The Mexican authorities say the hurricane intensified yesterday before hitting Acapulco, a beach resort town that is home to more than 1 million people. Now, meanwhile, Federal Security Secretary Rosa Rodriguez confirmed 27 deaths and 4 disappearances during President Andrés Obrador's news briefing. In the meantime, a British model and TikToker, Modo Adams, has been jailed for nearly 7 years in Peru after he was caught trying to smuggle cocaine out of the country. According to reports, Adams was intercepted at the George Chavez International Airport on 30th September with 2.9 kilograms of cocaine hidden in his suitcase. The 25-year-old was sentenced to 6 years and 8 months in a Peruvian prison. According to a court statement, the drugs were destined for the United Kingdom. Authorities found the drugs sealed into the back of his suitcase during a search. The Superior Court of Justice of Callao said in the statement, which was released last week. He was sentenced after admitting the drug smuggling charge, the court said, and was also fined. And now it's time for the latest business and stock market stories. Here is Davina Praise Oman.
Thank you, Xavier Roberts. Good evening. It is business news. My name is Davina Praise Omang. In the news, the European Central Bank kept interest rates at multi-year highs during its October meeting, marking a significant shift from its 15-month streak of rate hikes and reflecting a more cautious wait-and-see stance among policymakers, influenced by the gradual easing of price pressures and concerns about an impending recession. This decision follows a series of 10 consecutive rate increases since July 2022, which elevated the main refinancing operations rate to a 22-year high of 4.5% and the deposit facility rate to an all-time record of 4%. The central bank stated its determination to ensure that inflation returns to its 2% target over the medium term, saying it will maintain interest rates at these high levels for a sufficiently extended period until it achieves that objective. European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde announces the central bank's decision for the first time in more than a year.
The Governing Council today decided to keep the 3 key ECB interest rates unchanged. The incoming information has broadly confirmed our previous assessment of the medium-term inflation outlook. Inflation is still expected to stay too high for too long, and domestic price pressures remain strong. At the same time, inflation dropped markedly in September, including due to strong base effects, and most measures of underlying inflation have continued to ease. Our past interest rate increases continue to be transmitted forcefully into financing conditions. This is increasingly dampening demand and thereby helps push down inflation. We are determined to ensure that inflation returns to our 2% medium-term target in a timely manner. Based on our current assessment, we consider that the key ECB interest rates are at levels that, maintained for a sufficiently long duration, will make a substantial contribution to this goal. Our future decisions will ensure that our policy rates will be set at sufficiently restrictive levels for as long as necessary. We will continue to follow a data-dependent approach to determining the appropriate level and duration of restriction. In particular, our interest rate decisions will be based on our assessment of the inflation outlook in light of the incoming economic and financial data, the dynamics of underlying inflation, and the strength of monetary policy transmission.
Back in Nigeria, the federal government will on Friday stop the salaries of any public officer whose records cannot be verified on the Integrated Personnel and Payroll Information System. This was according to a statement signed by the head of the Civil Service of the Federation, Dr. Folashade Yemi Eson. It was reported that an extension was given to workers to verify their details, after which their October 2023 salaries would be seized. According to the statement, a 2-week verification, which would end on Friday, was put in place as an act of magnanimity for officers who did not participate in the earlier verifications. In 2013, the Office of the Head of the Civil Service of the Federation, being the repository of official records and information on all public servants, was saddled with the responsibility of cleansing the record on the payroll. Still in Nigeria, Nigeria has been unable to fully reap the benefits of increasing crude oil prices at the international market, as reports say there were yet about 30 oil cargoes yet to find buyers. According to market data reports, between 20 and 30 crude cargoes for November were without buyers, far more than was expected to be left over at this stage of the trading cycle. Some of Nigeria's crude grades, such as Bonga crude, were offered at a premium of $9 per barrel to the benchmark dated Brent, while Excravos and Forcados were on offer in excess of $8 in October. Meanwhile, freight rates have since jumped and refiners' profit margins have narrowed, weighing on demand. The low demand had in turn caused the country's crude grades to fall by $1 to $2 a barrel, according to traders. Nigerian stock market report. At the end of today's trading session on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, the benchmark all-share index paired 121.21 basis points to close at 67,084.95 points. The current market capitalization of the Nigerian Stock Exchange is 36.9 trillion naira. 117 listed equities participated in trading, ending with 12 gainers and 29 losers. McNichols led the gainers with 8.93% share price appreciation, closing at 61 kobo per share, followed by UAC of Nigeria with 6.09% gain and Owando 4.07%. On the losing side, Secure Electronic Technology came out last with an end-of-day price depreciation of 10% at 27 kobo per share, followed by Computer Warehouse Group at negative 9.94%, and Thomas White Nigeria at negative 9.84%. Fidelity Bank recorded the highest volume of 39.8 million traded shares, followed by Chams with 23.5 million and Access Holdings with 20.6 million traded shares. Well, this is all on business news, and back to Xavier Roberts for the rest of the news.
Many thanks, Davina. Still to come in the news. Newcastle Tonali banned for 10 months for betting rule breaches. To stay with us. Many thanks for staying tuned. Now in health, the Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Ali Pate, has debunked the misconceptions about the HPV vaccine, stressing that those refusing vaccination are making grave mistakes. Pate made this known in Abuja after a visit to the Kochingoro Primary Healthcare Center in the company of Professor Sanait Fisea. The minister noted that the vaccine was safe for girls as it would serve as a lifelong prevention against the disease. Reports say HPV is the most common viral infection of the reproductive tract, mainly transmitted through sexual contact. Still in health, the Director General of the National Agency for the Control of AIDS, NACA, Dr. Gambo Aliyu, has urged Nigerians to demand HIV testing, prevention, treatment and care services to achieve adequate coverage and to meet the United Nations target of ending AIDS by 2030. Aliyu said this at a two-day workshop held for social media influencers, bloggers and journalists in Abuja. He also said though HIV does not have a cure, it no longer kills and can be managed successfully. The NACA DG noted that the agency has succeeded in reducing HIV from the disease that kills to the disease that no longer kills. Let's head over now to Utube David for latest sports stories.
Hello, good evening and welcome. Thank you very much for joining. In sports, Newcastle and Italy midfielder Sandro Tonali has been banned for 10 months by the Italian Football Federation for breaching betting rules. The 23-year-old will not be eligible to play again until August and will be unavailable to feature at Euro 2024 next summer should Italy qualify. Sandro Tonali joined Newcastle from AC Milan in July for £55 million earlier this month. Juventus midfielder Nicolo Fagioli received a 7-month ban from the Football Association for betting breaches. He also agreed to a therapy plan for at least 6 months to tackle his gambling problem. Sandro Tonali and fellow midfielder Nicolo Zaniolo, who is on loan at Aston Villa from Galatasaray, were forced to leave Italy's training camp on 12 October after being told they were involved in an investigation by Italian prosecutors. During a 3-year spell at San Siro, Tonali helped Milan win the first Serie A title for 11 years in 2021 and 2022 season and reached last season's UEFA Champions League semi-finals. He came off the bench during Newcastle's 1-0 defeat by Borussia Dortmund in the UEFA Champions League last night. Tonali has made 12 appearances for Eddie Howe's side since becoming the Magpies' second most expensive signing. Moving on, African Soccer Governing Body has sent information to the Nigerian Football Federation and other qualified countries about the number of players to be registered for the 2023 African Cup of Nations in Ivory Coast. Each country was allowed to register 28 players for the last edition of the competition in Cameroon due to the effect of COVID-19. On the Continental Football Apex body today, earlier this morning, made it clear that it has reserved its decision on the squad list and that each country will be allowed to register 23 players. For the third consecutive time, 24 countries will participate in the competition, and the 2023 edition will kick off on the 13th of January 2024 to the 11th of February 2024. Finally, Nigeria's Super Eagles have maintained its 40th position in the latest FIFA World Ranking released earlier today. The World Governing Body released the latest ranking on its website. The 3-time African champions still remain 6th place in the African Continental Ranking. During the international break, the Jose Pesero-led side played 2 friendly games against Saudi Arabia and Mozambique, while the match-day 1 opponent in next month's 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifier, Lesotho, dropped to 153rd spot. Zimbabwe who will host the Super Eagles in match day 2 of the World Cup qualifiers, remain at 125. Other teams in the Super Eagles World Cup qualifying group, South Africa, Rwanda, and Benin Republic, are 64th, 140th, and 93rd, respectively. And that's all we have for you in sports this evening. I am Utabe David.
Hey, thanks, Utabe. And now on entertainment news, American reality TV star Kris Jenner has admitted that her biggest regret in life is cheating on the late Robert Kardashian with Caitlyn Jenner. Kris revealed this on the latest episode of The Kardashians when her daughter, Khloe, asked her why she was unfaithful to her late father. The question came up during a conversation about Khloe's ex Tristan Thompson's own fidelity. In response, Kris explained that she was really young and dumb, and that sometimes people do not understand the consequences of their actions. Recall that Kris was married to attorney Robert Sr. from 1978 until 1991. The union produced 4 children until they got divorced in 2014. Still on entertainment, Jada Smith has disclosed how the dynamics of her marriage with Will Smith dramatically changed after he slapped Chris Rock at last year's Oscars. Speaking during an interview, the actress said she never thought Will's getting up the stage had anything to do with her, but that when love is deeper than romance, they need to stand by him came. Reports say the pair had secretly separated 6 years prior to the incident. Meanwhile, Jada explained that even though they are apart, they always have each other's backs. Meanwhile, A Vote True, a 3-minute short film released ahead of Nigeria's 2023 elections, won a prize at this year's Cannes World Film Festival, adding weight to the perception that 2023 is the year of Nigeria's emergence on the global cultural stage. Directed by British filmmaker David Simon and released in January 2023, Vote True is a compelling political drama steering Nigerians to change the directory of the nation using their democratic power. The film opens with a stirring montage of scenes from Nigeria's Independence Day in 1960, a time of hope and optimism for the young nation. The movie captures the vibrant colors and infectious energy of Nigerians as they celebrate their newfound freedom. And lastly, on entertainment tonight, Grammy-winning singer Temilade Openi, popularly known as Tems, has identified her compatriot Ashake and buzzing South African singer Tyler as her favorite African artists at the moment. The Oscar-nominated diva spoke on the red carpet of the Time 100 Next Gala in New York recently. She was one of the honorees of the 2023 Time 100 Next event. She was named as a next-gen voice. Meanwhile, the Essence crooner was not the only Nigerian who made the 2023 Time 100 Next list. The CEO of health startup CT Block Health, Dr. Toyin Ajayi, and tech founder Wemimo Abe made the list alongside co-founder Samuel Goyle for their startup Isuzu. And that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, SpectrumTv.ng. You have been watching Spectrum News at 9. My name is Xavier Robert. Have a good night rest. Bye for now.